The lotus biology itself has been used as a link for us to conceive of a growing and expanding and cycle of life, not only on this planet through biology, but also in the cosmos. Just as biology, just as the lotus goes through these evolutions and cycles of flowering and blossoming, and the very structure of it, just like a little spore growing forth like a sun or like a galaxy, evolving, having a beginning, evolving to then blossom forth from those little particles of energy and life, giving rise to such beauty and diversity as we see in the galaxies and in the different suns, and such a connection to, in the angiosperm life, that genetically those plants, all flowering plants, are genetically alike in the same way that humans are alike to our mammal cousins. Then coming straight to spirituality, we'll see this blossoming of thinking of the inner world, and how the inner world and the sacred heart gives rise to the spiritual forms. Beginning in the Vedic tradition, you have the lotus posture. It's very sacred in terms of evolving one's consciousness to come in touch with deeper ancient histories, such as the connection of the Egyptians to the lily and lotus. And these ancient cultures all recognized the lotus as something integral to their understanding of the sun, of the universe, and of natural geometry. So the natural time-space geometry takes this flower pattern, it's an evolving flower of life, if you would, wisdom tree, and you'll see the connection between that and electricity and energy being directly put into the design of this ancient connection to electricity that the Egyptians and ancient cultures had developed. So there was already electricity in those times, and their deep connection to science in ancient times, such as in the Saraswati Valley and in different parts of the ancient world, you'll see this pattern of the flower or the lotus flower, which it's connected to, arising and giving rise to leaps and bounds in architecture, leaps and bounds in philosophy, in theology, and ultimately into cosmotheism, in which the living lotus is the very shape of the beautiful expression of the universe, and also the internal world. So these sacred structures were also an entrance into the heart, and through the heart, when the heart blossoms, then one has the inner realization of the universe through the imagination. Also, a deep spiritual connection for temples to represent the spiritual world, or these realms of higher cosmic energy, of which our material world that we're used to becomes a reflection of a spiritual world, which is full of life, full of diversity, full of, in a sense, like a cosmic forest. You'll see this spread over so many different cultures, this symbology, this geometry hidden in the architecture, hidden in secret seals, hidden in ancient meditative and spiritual traditions throughout Asia and in China, in the temple work. This deep connection is there because of the realization that these patterns are somehow arising out of nature itself. The cosmos, reality, is giving rise from the very small and also from the very large, and nurturing. And you'll see all cultures, doesn't matter whether they're ancient or modern, linking the sense of beauty and wonder in this lotus geometry. And it also bringing great delight in a sense of mathematics and nature and fractals, and which we're going to talk a lot about. We're going to talk a lot about spirituality, a lot about science, and a lot about the lotus also used throughout modern times. In a lot of modern architecture, they've realized the potential of the lotus in such a profound image that museums, governments, individual traditions, all gathering momentum, and even modern cities using the aesthetic and beauty of the lotus to light up their cities and bring beauty and wonder to this sacred form and shape. Its very structure, the structure that hides behind this kind of as above so below, this world being a materialization of the reflection of this spiritual higher energy. How this takes shape in this world is so beautiful, because humanity comes together and they realize, wow, symmetry and beauty are so important that we are willing to spend millions and billions of dollars developing amazing structures to show the dynamic beauty of the lotus and the potential of it in the future. The potentials of the lotus are almost mind-blowing when you actually research and go deeper, and a sense of future, how the very structure of the lotus can give rise to new kinds of architecture, new kinds of thinking. So we're going to be bringing up a lot of this new kind of thinking, and we're going to take a deeper look, almost as you'd say, X-ray vision, into some of the deeper spiritual sides and scientific sides of the lotus. So we're going to come to the more spiritual, and we see a deep connection between the Om and the lotus, as if the lotus is an expression of the blossoming of these primal vibrations. Om is connected, as many other mantras are, to the very depth of our core being, which is hidden beyond the atoms, beyond material energy, in a diverse spiritual dimension in which subtle energy is materialized. Spiritual energy is materialized into the forms and shapes we see outside of ourselves. But that Om, being very primal in terms of the vibrating strings of the entire universe, or our own galaxy, or our own sun, and the same relating to the lotus. The lotus has implications on a cosmic level, on a galactic level, on a solar level, and this deep connection with mantra to bring out this, or to blossom the potential of the inner world, to realize this multi-dimensional nature. We see this connected to sacred meditation and connection with reality through a very humanistic naturalism, in which the central figure, the original Black Hercules, is seen as the very source of spiritual energy. And this spiritual energy, which is the very source of the universe, is in another dimension, and the goddess is there as the source of this energy. That energy in the spiritual domain, or in the spiritual dimension, these very subtle and higher cosmic energies actually take shape and form. They manifest play and divine pastimes that then reflect into our world, and thus we have also such shapes and forms and diversity in our materialized reality or dimension. And their very source coming from this deep connection to the cosmic forest. This also spoken of Krishna in the Gita, which is the essence of the Upanishads, sharing this lotus miracle, how that lotus is this unfolding of wisdom that Krishna shares also in the Bhagavad Purana, with Uddhava and Maitreya, and shares with particularly Maitreya deep cosmotheism, or deep connections to cosmology, mathematics, and that the Dwarka and Atlantean civilization, the essence of its structure and its architecture, laid in the lotus for beauty. It's also used throughout sacred rituals in India even today, with Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri in Southeast India, to the point where without the lotus there is almost no tangible worship, and that the Lord enjoys being covered by lotuses and the lotus, and taking the very form of the lotus in the Padmavesh, or the lotus dress. And this form also then manifesting through the other various aspects of spirituality to Goddess Lakshmi, who is considered the very source of beauty and good fortune, and that manifesting through the very nature of the lotus for its potential to instill beauty, longevity, and indeed also knowledge, that the wisdom hidden within the lotus is directly related to the wisdom goddesses of the East, with Saraswati, and also with the Devi, or Durga Devi, as the source of the material energy, blossoming forth the various creations within our universe, and to the very source of healing, where the nectar is also related to the lotus, and somehow a deep hidden connection, where we see that in modern medicine, longevity coming forth from the lotus. Also a deep sense of connection and personalism in our own energy bodies through the yoga system, of opening up spiritually to the various ideas within one's own psyche and with one's own energy. And this also translating to more modern Buddhism, with the flowering of concepts of the lotus and the sacred goddess. And we see that also the very word happy from the Egyptian god Happy, and he's the lotus god, he's the blue lily god, bringing happiness and fertility and life. We see this deeply in ancient Egyptian culture, because in fact they're ancient Vedic culture with many proofs there. We also see this same idea in Aboriginal culture, a deep connection to the lotus. The Australian Aboriginals in ancient times, they also revered the lotus as a sacred source of being and sustenance and life. And the ancient Greeks also, the goddess Urael, the sister of Medusa, connected to this ancient, the Gorgon or foxnut, and them being immortals, in a sense related to this ancient lotus ponds.
Lotus 123.